High above a quiet city, a police helicopter cut through the night sky, its blades echoing over distant lights. Inside, a young black woman sat handcuffed, her face streaked with tears. The officers around her spoke in harsh tones, their eyes cold and distant. No one spoke of justice, only control. Then a sudden jolt. The door slid open and the air roared in. She looked at the officer beside her, and before she could say a word, she was gone. The darkness swallowed her whole. But what happened next would expose more than one crime. It would uncover a truth the entire city had tried to forget. Her name was Alyssa Carter, a 27-year-old nurse who had spent her life helping others. Born and raised in a small southern town, she knew the quiet pain of racism well before adulthood. Growing up, she watched her father stop for no reason, and her brother searched because he fit the description. But Alyssa believed in healing, not hate. She had moved to the city to serve in a community clinic, treating anyone who needed help, regardless of who they were. That night, she was driving home after a long shift. Her car's taillight had gone out, something she hadn't even noticed. A patrol car flashed behind her. She pulled over calmly, expecting a simple warning. But within minutes, things escalated. The officers asked her to step out, questioned her tone, and accused her of resisting. Dashcam footage would later show Alyssa standing still, hands raised, voice trembling. Instead of listening, they grabbed her, handcuffed her, and threw her into the back of a police SUV. She asked what she'd done. They didn't answer. They drove her to a field where a helicopter waited. And as she was forced inside, she realized something terrifying. This wasn't a procedure. The helicopter lifted into the cold air, its lights flashing over the sleeping suburbs. Alyssa sat on the metal floor trying to steady her breathing. She couldn't understand why she was there. The officers said nothing. One laughed, another stared at her as if she were less than human. She thought about her patients, the elderly woman who called her Angel, the child who once said she wanted to be like her. Those moments felt far away now. All she could feel was fear. Below them, the city lights faded into darkness. The lead officer, a tall man with a scar down his cheek, turned to his team. "She thinks she's special," he muttered. "Let's see if angels can fly." The others hesitated, unsure if it was a joke. But then, as the helicopter tilted slightly, the wind ripped through the open side door. Alyssa tried to speak, her voice breaking. "Please, I didn't do anything," but no one answered. One of them looked away. Another checked his watch. And then, a push. Her scream vanished into the night. For a moment, the officers were silent. Then the scarred man laughed. Short, sharp, cruel. "Problem solved?" he said, but fate wasn't finished. Alyssa hit something hard on her way down, a cluster of trees just outside the marsh. Her fall was broken, her body bruised, but she was alive. Barely. Crawling through the mud, she found herself face to face with an old fisherman who had seen the helicopter circling earlier. He dragged her to his boat and hid her under a tarp, whispering, "Stay quiet." By morning, the news was already spreading. Police claimed she'd escaped custody during transport. But they didn't know she was alive, or that the fisherman had a camera pointed at the sky that night. 2 days later, the video surfaced online. It showed the helicopter hovering low, an officer at the open door, and a figure falling out into the darkness. Within hours, outrage exploded. Protesters filled the streets demanding justice. The department denied involvement, but the truth was too clear to bury. Alyssa, still in pain, was taken to a nearby hospital under protection. Her body was covered in cuts and bruises, but her voice was steady when she spoke to investigators. She described everything: the faces, the laughter, the last words she heard before being pushed. The footage matched her account. One by one, the officers involved were arrested. The scarred officer, the one who led the act, was charged with attempted murder and conspiracy to cover up evidence. The chief resigned under pressure, claiming he had no knowledge of what his men had done. But the trial wasn't easy. The defense called it an accident. They painted Alyssa as unstable, uncooperative, even dangerous. Yet every lie they told only fueled more anger in the streets. People from every background came together. holding signs with her name. They didn't just demand punishment, they demanded change. Months passed, but the echoes of that night never faded. Alyssa's fall became a symbol, not of weakness, but of courage that refused to die. When the verdict came, the city held its breath. Guilty. The officers who had once laughed from the sky were now behind bars, stripped of badges that had once made them untouchable. Alyssa, though scarred, returned to her life slowly. She went back to her clinic, not to forget what happened, but to prove that love and dignity could survive even the deepest injustice. Reporters asked her how she could still smile after everything. She said quietly, "Because hate wanted me silent. I'm still speaking." Her story sparked something powerful. Schools began teaching her case as a lesson in empathy. Strangers who had never met her carried signs with her name, demanding fair treatment for every victim of racial violence. And though laws changed slowly, minds began to shift faster than anyone expected. In the end, Alyssa didn't just survive the fall, she lifted others who had been pushed down long before her.